Many Canadians have been feeling the squeeze of high costs on all kinds of things and the pressure to tip at more places. Now some bridal shops in Edmonton are asking people to leave a gratuity when they buy a wedding dress. As Pippa Reid explains, some critics say that is going too far.
If you've ever planned a wedding, chances are you've tipped your caterer or perhaps even your DJ. But did you tip the consultant who sold you your wedding dress? Well, some bridal stores in Edmonton are asking people to do just that.
I was very surprised. I wasn't expecting to see a tip option, but when it did and she said, no, don't worry about it, like, no, let's just pay for your dress, it kind of eased me a bit. And I'm like, no, girl, you deserve this tip.
Brittany Henderson-Curry says she left a 15% tip on a $1,700 dress. If you do the math, that's $255. She says she felt great about leaving a tip because the service she received was worth it. The store owner brought in the tip option because brides were asking how they could leave a tip.
The girls here, because they work really hard, and I've been doing this for a long time, so my body can feel what I've done, right? Like, it's hard to bend over. Sometimes we take off our shoes when brides aren't here. Like, it's uncomfortable.
I called around, and of the 8 stores I reached out to, 3 have introduced a tipping option. And Pal says it's even more common in the US.
These brides are tipping like $200 to $300 after the dress purchase, right? So there's large tips, or we don't get large tips here.
Experts say this all speaks to something called tip creep, with more and more businesses asking you to tip.
Creeping into the wedding dress, the creeping into, the candle shop or the oil lube place. It's like, oh my goodness, when is this gonna stop? Who's, is my doctor, is my kid's teacher gonna ask me to tip next?
Bruce McAdam says some business owners have one big reason for supporting tip creep.
These are typically minimum wage employers or slightly above minimum wage. And as a recruiting tool, they can now mention that you will be receiving some tips as well.
But some critics say tipping on a wedding dress is going too far.
If you want your consultants to make money, be appreciated, then pay them more. Don't put it on the customers to make sure that is they're doing that.
We'll have to wait and see whether wedding dress tipping becomes the norm in Canada. But if you're planning a wedding right now, you might want to consider budgeting extra alongside all the other expenses that come along with your big day.
Pippa Reid reporting. Joining us now for a closer look at how tipping in service industries works is Kimberley Brownlee, Professor of Philosophy at UBC and Canada Research Chair in Ethics and Political and Social Philosophy. Kimberley, thanks for joining us. The option to tip is spreading to more services, but is there a clear system by which this happens?
It's a good question. At the moment, it still seems to be very ad hoc. We tip the Uber driver, we tip the hotel porter, we tip the hairstylist, but not the substitute teacher, not the seasonal fruit picker, not the theater actor.
Now, we just heard from a bride who was hesitant to leave a gratuity, but then did so because she felt the designer, quote, deserved it. And as we heard, wedding dresses are expensive. What impact does the pressure to show monetary appreciation have?
So I think that pressure moves it out of the space of a gratuity. Gratuity means gratuitous, sort of beyond the call of duty. It moves into a space of duty where you feel obligated to do this in order to show that you valued the service you received. But it's in a way, a strange way to show valuing because, we wouldn't tip our family doctor. I've never received a tip as a university professor, and it would feel strange to do that. And so I'm wondering if part of it is that we tend to tip in those industries that it's maybe easier to devalue, to view as low skilled, to view as you are showing largesse, sort of a noble gesture as the customer, rather than the person being paid well and being properly valued for their work by their employer.
Is it almost like a pity gesture?
I'm wondering if that's part of it, and because it doesn't happen in some industries where it would seem to have a similar profile, someone who's precarious, someone who's doing casual work. It's the people we see who receive the tip. So the invisible worker, the seasonal fruit picker, or the back behind the scenes staff, they don't get the tip, but they're in the same financial situation as the waiter in front of us.
We do know that in some restaurants, and based on many years of experience in the restaurant industry, there are pooling of tips that are given to servers. But regardless of whether it's appropriate or not, some service workers rely on those extra tips for that extra bit of income. The argument, though, what about customers who may say or really can't afford that?
So when we're greeted in the coffee shop with the 3 tipping options, many of us would think I'm being asked to judge how well I was served, and I would leave 30% if I was really happy. But maybe another way to see that is if I have a high income, I should leave the 30%, but it should in some way be means tested. The customer who can't afford to leave a large tip shouldn't feel duty bound to show gratitude in that same sort of strong financial way that someone well off could. But that's not our history of tipping. We tend to use the tip to signal how happy we were, not how much we can give.
Kimberley Brownlee, Professor of Philosophy at UBC, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
My pleasure.